The castle stretched like a dark jewel against the night sky. Its towers pierced the clouds, and the ceremony hall within shone with golden light, spilling warmth into the cold stone corridors beyond. Tonight, the hall was alive with music, laughter, and the rustle of gowns and velvet cloaks. Nobles gathered, celebrating a union of two powerful houses, unaware that beneath their feet, centuries-old shadows stirred. Waiting, the Alpha King stood at the edge of the hall, observing the crowd with a calm, almost dangerous grace. His presence alone silenced whispers and turned curious eyes toward him. He was a man of immense power, and every step he took radiated authority. Yet, beneath his commanding exterior, a silent ache lingered, a loneliness that few could see. Even surrounded by the revelry of his kingdom, he felt the pull of something unseen, something buried deep in the very bones of the castle. It began as a subtle instinct, a tug in his mind, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the stone floor. At first, he thought it was the music, or the whispers of the courtiers, or perhaps a trick of the shadows. But then he sensed it clearly, something alive below the ceremony hall. Hidden, waiting. The nobles continued their dancing and feasting, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding beneath them. The king's eyes narrowed. His hand, resting lightly on the hilt of his sword, twitched almost imperceptibly. Something, or someone, was calling him. Not with words, but with a pull that was instinctive, primal, impossible to ignore. He stepped away from the crowd, his cloak flowing behind him like a shadow in motion. The echo of his boots in the marble corridors was the only sound until he reached the center of the hall. The floor beneath him seemed different, cooler, denser. He knelt, running his fingers over the carved tiles, tracing the subtle grooves. His senses sharpened. And for a moment, he imagined eyes watching him from the darkness. Then it happened. A faint click, like the whisper of a lock releasing, vibrated through the stone beneath him. A section of the floor shifted, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The sight made the air thicken. The king's heart quickened not with fear, but with certainty. He knew that whatever lay below was meant for him to find. Without hesitation, he descended. The staircase was narrow, carved from the same cold stone as the rest of the castle. But here, the walls seemed alive, etched with ancient runes that pulsed faintly with a silver light. The air grew heavier, scented with damp earth and something faintly metallic, like old magic. As he reached the bottom, the darkness opened into a vast chamber. Torches burned along the walls, their flames flickering with a strange, almost lifelike energy. Shadows danced across the stone, forming shapes that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. And then, he saw her. She stood in the center of the room, bathed in the dim glow of the torches. At first, he thought she was part of the shadows, an illusion, a trick of the light. But when she moved, the air shifted. She was young and beautiful, her hair falling like a dark river over her shoulders. Her eyes deep, endless pools of green locked onto his, filled with curiosity, defiance, and something more fragile, the echo of centuries of sorrow. The woman had been buried in darkness, trapped by a curse centuries old, bound to the catacombs beneath the ceremony hall. Her presence was more than magical, it was alive, ancient, powerful, yet painfully restrained. She did not speak, but her gaze conveyed a lifetime of waiting and longing. The king took a cautious step forward. The moment he did, the torches flickered violently, shadows twisting like living things. A soft, melodic voice echoed through the chamber, not spoken aloud but felt in the mind itself. "You should not be here," it whispered. "I was drawn," the king said, his voice steady, though his pulse raced. "I felt you. I could not ignore it." A faint smile tugged at her lips, though it did not reach her eyes. Many have come before you, she said softly. All left as they came, or worse, never returned. He studied her carefully. She was cautious, but she was not afraid. Her presence demanded respect, yet it was fragile, like a candle flickering against a storm. Something within him stirred something beyond curiosity, beyond duty. He felt a protective instinct he could not name. A pull that made his blood run hotter than the fire in the torches. I am not like the others, he said, stepping closer. The shadows around him shifted, as if watching, listening, reacting. I will not leave without understanding why you are here. I will not. I will not leave without understanding why you are here. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And, if you cannot understand, then I will stay until I do, he replied. The words were not boastful. They were a promise, a declaration, that he would see this through, whatever it demanded. She tilted her head, studying him as though she were trying to weigh the truth in his soul. The silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. The air seemed to thrum with magic, as if the room itself recognized the connection forming. You have no idea what you are stepping into, she finally said. This place, this curse, it will test you, break you, change you. Are you ready for that? The king did not hesitate. I am ready. Her lips parted slightly, but she did not smile. Instead, she vanished, not like a person leaving, but like smoke pulled into the wind. One moment she was there. The next, only the shadows remained. The king's heart thudded in his chest. He reached out instinctively, fingers brushing the empty air where she had stood. He moved deeper into the catacombs, guided not by sight but by instinct. Every step brought him closer to her, closer to the mystery that had haunted the castle for centuries. As he navigated the winding tunnels, he saw signs of her presence. A faint shimmer of light in the corner of his eye. A soft echo of footsteps just ahead. Whispers carried by the cold air. The catacombs were alive with secrets. Statues of forgotten kings and queens lined the walls, their stone eyes seeming to watch him, judging him, warning him. Strange symbols were etched into the floors and walls, glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy. Some pulsed like hearts, others writhed like living things. And everywhere, the sense of her presence pressed against him, almost tangible. Finally, he reached a wide chamber. It was larger than the ceremony hall above, but emptier. Columns stretched to the ceiling, carved with stories long forgotten. The air was thick and heavy. Yet there was a strange beauty to it, a silent grandeur that made the king pause. And then he saw her again. She stood at the far end of the chamber, framed by a circle of faint silver light. Her gaze met his once more, holding him in a spell of longing and unspoken words. You came, she whispered, though the sound was carried on the air itself, reaching directly into his mind. I could not stay away, he replied. I felt you, and I had to find you. Her expression softened, but only slightly. There was relief there, but also caution. She took a step closer, then paused, watching him carefully. This place, it is dangerous, she said, even for one as powerful as you. The curse beneath this castle is older than kings, older than queens. It will try to break you, and it will not forgive weakness. I do not fear it, he said, stepping closer to the circle of light. I fear nothing but losing you before I even know who you are. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable, something like hope, or perhaps the echo of a long-buried dream. She seemed to waver, caught between the shadows of her imprisonment and the faint promise of freedom that his presence offered. Before he could move any closer, the ground beneath her trembled. The shadows twisted violently, wrapping around the pillars and crawling along the walls like living serpents. A deep, Low hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the king's chest. The woman's eyes widened. "It begins," she whispered. The king's instincts flared. He stepped forward, reaching toward her, determined to protect her, to reach her before the darkness could claim her once again. But the shadows surged, forming a barrier of black mist between them. His hand met only emptiness. She was on the other side, just out of reach. Her eyes locked on his, filled with both fear and longing. "I will find a way," he promised, his voice echoing through the chamber. "No darkness, no curse, no shadow will keep me from you." Her lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Then prove it," she whispered. "Or be lost forever." The king stood there, heart pounding, as the shadows writhed and the air pulsed with ancient magic. For the first time in centuries, the woman in the darkness had a chance, and for the first time, the Alpha King knew that some instincts were not just survival, they were destiny. The chamber seemed to hold its breath as he prepared to step deeper into the unknown, ready to face whatever ancient forces lurked below the ceremony hall. And in the deepest shadows, the woman watched him with quiet hope. The game had begun, and neither of them would emerge unchanged. The chamber trembled as the shadows writhed, forming a barrier of black mist between the king and the woman. The Alpha King stood firm, his heart pounding, his instincts screaming at him to move forward, to reach her. Every fiber of his being ached to bridge the distance, yet the darkness pressed back with a force he had never felt. The woman's eyes, glowing faintly in the silver light, met his across the barrier. She did not step back. Instead, she raised her hand slowly, and the barrier seemed to pulse in response. Her voice echoed in his mind once more. "You cannot pass this way," she said softly, not without understanding what lies beneath. The curse tests more than strength. It tests desire, fear, and the heart itself. The king's brow furrowed. He had faced armies, storms, and betrayal, yet something in these words chilled him. Not fear of death, but the idea that his own heart, his instincts, his longing could betray him. Still, he stepped forward, pressing against the shadow, feeling it resist like a living thing. "I do not fear," he said firmly, "and I will not let the darkness decide for me." For a moment, the mist seemed to hesitate. Then, with a hiss like exhaling smoke, it parted just enough for him to see her clearly. She stepped backward, leading him toward a narrow passageway that descended further into the catacombs. The tunnels twisted and turned, carved long ago from living stone. Strange carvings lined the walls, figures of kings, queens, and beasts, entwined in battles that time had nearly forgotten. The air was damp, and the scent of earth and ancient magic clung to everything. Torches burned intermittently, their flames flickering as if breathing. "You follow me," the woman said, her voice soft yet firm. The king's eyes never left her. "I do not wish to save," he replied. "I wish to understand, and I will not stop until I do." She studied him, her gaze piercing and unreadable. Then she turned, moving gracefully through the narrow tunnels, shadows curling around her like water. He followed without hesitation. Their footsteps echoed softly, a rhythm that seemed almost in tune with the heartbeat of the catacombs themselves. As they walked, the corridors shifted, almost alive. One moment, the passage seemed endless. The next, it opened into a chamber filled with statues of warriors long gone. Each statue's eyes seemed to follow them, judging, warning, or perhaps acknowledging the king's presence. The woman paused before one of the statues, her hand hovering over its cold stone face. "This was a king once," she said quietly. "He sought power above all else, and it consumed him. The curse feeds on such desire, twisting it into darkness. You must not let yourself become like him." The king nodded, understanding more than she realized. He had ruled with strength and fear before, But he had never allowed himself to feel this pull toward someone else. This mixture of longing and restraint. He had not yet faced an enemy that tested his heart. Suddenly, the floor beneath them shook, and a shadow split from the wall, forming a figure with glowing eyes. It moved silently, encircling them, a guardian of the ancient curse. The woman raised her hand, and a silver light shimmered from her fingers. The shadow recoiled slightly, hissing, but it did not retreat completely. "You see," she said, her voice steady. "Even the shadows obey the curse. They will test your instincts, your judgment, and your control. You must move carefully, or both of us will be lost." The king's eyes narrowed. "Then we move together." With that, he took her hand. The moment their fingers touched, a spark of energy traveled between them. It was not electricity but something deeper, a connection that transcended words. The shadows around them seemed to pause, as if sensing that their bond was not just desire, it was trust. They moved as one through the corridors, avoiding pitfalls and traps set centuries ago. The shadows lunged, but she guided him, whispering directions that seemed to anticipate his every move. He felt her presence as a tether, a lifeline in the suffocating darkness. As they advanced, the woman spoke of her life before the curse. She had been a guardian of the castle, a queen in her own right, betrayed by those who feared her power. The curse had bound her here, beneath celebrations and ceremonies, unseen, yet ever present. She had watched generations of kings and nobles rise and fall, waiting for one who could understand the depth of her solitude. "You could have come for power," she said softly, "like the others. But you did not. You came because you felt something you cannot name." The king's gaze softened. "I felt you, not as a prisoner or a legend, but as a person. And I will not let centuries of shadows decide your fate." Her eyes glimmered, a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. She led him deeper still, into a chamber where the ceiling arched high, lost in darkness. In the center, a pool of water reflected the torchlight, rippling unnaturally, as though alive. Symbols of the old curse shimmered faintly on the water's surface, and the king felt a shiver of recognition. "This is the heart of the curse," she said, stepping cautiously to the edge of the pool. "Here, the shadows draw their strength, and here, a choice must be made. To free me, you must face what lies in your own heart." The king knelt at the pool, watching the reflections twist and shift. Images of his past arose. Battles fought, decisions made in anger, moments where he had placed duty above compassion. Shadows of regret and pride swirled in the water, threatening to pull him in. "You must face it willingly," the woman said, standing beside him. "Only then can the curse be broken." He took a deep breath and looked into the water. Fear, pride, loneliness, they all stared back at him. Yet he did not flinch. He acknowledged each one, naming them in his mind, and let them pass without resistance. The shadows that had once seemed threatening now felt distant, like echoes fading into silence. The woman watched, her expression softening. "You understand more than most," she said quietly. "But the curse does not yield easily. There is one final test, one final shadow, that must be faced together." Before he could ask, the pool shimmered violently, and from its depths rose a figure cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glowed like embers, and its voice was a chorus of whispers, echoing every fear, doubt, and sorrow he had ever felt. "You think you can save her?" it hissed, circling them. "You think you can conquer the darkness?" The king stood firm, stepping in front of her, his sword drawn not for battle, but as a symbol of protection and resolve. "We do not conquer the darkness," he said steadily. "We endure it." Together, the shadow lunged, and the woman's hand met his. Silver light flared between them, and for a moment, the chamber was blinded by its brilliance. When it faded, the shadow had retreated, swirling back into the depths of the pool. The king and the woman stood together, breathless, the air charged with energy and relief. She turned to him, eyes reflecting both exhaustion and admiration. "You have passed the test," she said softly. "Few could have endured what you have, and even fewer would have stayed by my side." The king reached for her again, and this time, there was no barrier. He felt the connection between them strengthen. A bond forged not by desire alone, but by trust, courage, and understanding. For a moment, silence reigned in the chamber. Then the woman spoke, her voice low, almost hesitant. "The curse is weakened, but it is not gone. There are forces older than this castle, older than kings, that will not allow my freedom to come easily. You must be prepared, Alpha King." He nodded, determination burning in his eyes. "I am prepared for anything, as long as I face it with you." A faint smile curved her lips, and for the first time, the darkness around her seemed to retreat slightly, as though acknowledging her newfound hope. Yet even in this moment of fragile triumph, the echoes of ancient magic whispered warnings, promising that their journey was far from over. The king knew then that his instincts had not merely guided him, they had led him to a destiny intertwined with hers. And as they moved further into the heart of the catacombs, hand in hand, both understood that the darkness they had faced together was only the beginning of a deeper, more perilous journey. The tremor passed, leaving the catacombs eerily still. Yet the silence was heavy, charged with an energy that pressed against the king and the woman as they stepped carefully through the chamber. The figure in the shadows had not moved, but its presence lingered, like a storm waiting to break. The woman's hand tightened around the king's. "We are close," she said softly, her voice trembling with both determination and apprehension. "The source of the curse lies ahead. Once we reach it, nothing will be the same again." He nodded. "Then we face it together." His words were steady, a promise as unyielding as the stone walls around them. The tunnels narrowed, forcing them to walk side by side, their shoulders brushing as they moved. Each step seemed to echo the weight of centuries, each breath mingling with the scent of ancient earth and magic. The king felt the pull of destiny more strongly than ever. He had faced armies, storms, and betrayal, yet nothing had tested him like this. Nothing had demanded that he confront his own heart as he did now. Finally, they reached a vast chamber, larger than any before. The ceiling arched into darkness, and in the center of the room stood a throne carved from black stone. Its surface writhed with shadows that moved like living things. The air was thick and heavy, filled with whispers of the past, echoes of kings and queens who had sought power and lost themselves to it. The woman stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the throne. "This is it," she said, "the heart of the curse. Here, the darkness will test us in every way. It will show you your fears, your regrets, your weaknesses, and it will try to turn us against each other. 200. 200. The king's eyes scanned the chamber. "Then we do not falter," he said. "We face it as one." The shadows on the throne stirred, forming a shape, a figure of a queen, regal and terrifying, her eyes glowing with a cold, ancient light. Her presence radiated power and anger, the weight of centuries of betrayal and sorrow pressing down on them. "Who dares enter my domain?" The figure intoned, her voice echoing like rolling thunder. "Who dares disturb the balance I have maintained for generations?" The woman stepped beside the king. "I do not seek your favor," she said firmly. "I seek freedom, and I seek justice for what was stolen from me." The queen's figure laughed, a sound that cut through the air like ice. "Freedom comes at a cost," she said. "And you, mortal king, will learn that no one can defy me without sacrifice." The king stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of the woman. I do not fear sacrifice, he said, but I will not allow you to harm her. 1. The shadows twisted, forming a storm of black tendrils that lashed toward them. The king drew his sword, not to strike, but to stand as a shield. The woman raised her hands, silver light shimmering from her fingertips, meeting the darkness with brilliance. The two forces collided in a clash of energy, light and shadow twisting together in a dance of power. The chamber trembled as the darkness tested them, whispering their deepest fears and regrets. The king saw visions of his past decisions made in anger, allies lost, moments where he had ruled with fear rather than wisdom. Shadows tried to claw at his mind, but he did not flinch. He gripped the sword firmly, grounding himself, drawing strength from the woman at his side. You are strong, the queen's figure hissed, but strength alone cannot break the chains of the curse. You must prove your heart, your soul, your loyalty. The woman turned to the king, her eyes shining in the dim light. We must do it together. Trust me, and trust yourself. He nodded, understanding the truth in her words. They moved toward the throne, hand in hand, letting their combined strength and trust guide them. The shadows lashed and recoiled, trying to separate them, but they pressed forward, their connection a shield against the darkness. At the throne, the woman placed her hand on the stone. Silver light flared, illuminating the chamber with a brilliance that made the shadows writhe in agony. The king stepped beside her, placing his hand over hers. A surge of energy flowed through them, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The queen's figure rose higher, her voice a roar that shook the very walls. You think you can undo what has lasted for centuries? You think love and loyalty can undo power and betrayal? The king's gaze never wavered. Love and loyalty are stronger than fear and hatred, he said, and together, we are stronger than the darkness you wield. The silver light flared again, and the shadows screamed, twisting and breaking apart. The throne shattered, black stone crumbling into dust. The chamber shook violently, and for a moment, the darkness seemed ready to consume them both. Then, as suddenly as it began, the chaos stopped. Silence fell, heavy, but peaceful. The chamber was still, and the oppressive weight of the curse had lifted. The woman turned to the king, her eyes filled with wonder and relief. It's done, she whispered. The curse, it is broken. He reached for her, taking her hands in his. You are free, he said softly. No shadows, no chains. No ancient magic can bind you again. She smiled, a true, unguarded smile that reached her eyes for the first time in centuries. I feared this day would never come, she said. But you believed in me when no one else did. You trusted me, even when the darkness tried to tear us apart. Tried, too. He drew her close, and for a moment, the world outside the catacombs ceased to exist. In the stillness, there was only them, the Alpha King, the woman who had been buried in darkness, and the bond forged through trust, courage, and unspoken understanding. Yet even in this moment of fragile triumph, the shadows whispered faintly at the edges of the chamber, a reminder that magic never truly disappears. But for the first time, the woman felt hope instead of fear, and the king felt peace instead of longing. They had faced the darkness together, and in doing so, they had found each other. The king helped her to stand fully, and together they ascended the narrow stairs leading back to the ceremony hall. The golden light above greeted them like a promise. The noise of celebration softened now into a distant hum. They stepped into the hall, no longer hidden, no longer constrained by shadows. The nobles looked at them with curiosity, unaware of the trials that had unfolded beneath their feet. But the king and the woman did not notice them. Their eyes met, and in that gaze, there was understanding, trust, and a bond that could not be broken by fear or darkness. You have changed, she said softly. Not just the curse, but yourself. You have faced more than any king should. And yet, you are still here. He smiled faintly. And you have changed me, he replied. Not through fear, but through strength and courage. You have shown me a part of myself I never knew existed. They stood together, hand in hand, as the castle seemed to exhale around them. The ceremony hall was bright and golden, a stark contrast to the catacombs below, yet neither the grandeur nor the music mattered now. What mattered was that they had found each other, had faced the darkness, and had emerged stronger. The woman leaned slightly into him, her head resting near his shoulder. "Do you think it is truly over?" she asked quietly. "For now," he said, his voice steady and soft. "But whatever comes, we face it together." And in that moment, beneath the towering ceilings and the glittering chandeliers, the Alpha King and the woman who had been buried in darkness felt the weight of centuries lift. They had survived the curse, conquered the shadows, and discovered a bond stronger than fear, stronger than time itself. Yet the faintest whisper of magic lingered in the air, a reminder that destiny is never truly finished, and that even in freedom, the past can touch the present. But for the first time in centuries, hope was not a distant dream. It was real, and it was theirs. They stepped forward together, ready to face whatever the world above had in store. Their hearts aligned, their trust unshakable, and their bond eternal.